The classroom hummed with a faint, almost hypnotic vibration. It was subtle, the kind of background hum one could only hear in the heart of the Aerolax Academy's orbital station, where the machinery of advanced alien engineering never fully slept. The walls glowed faintly green, illuminated by bioluminescent panels that thrummed with organic life. A stark contrast to the cold, sterile metal floors beneath. Rows of sleek, transparent desks arranged in a semicircle faced a broad display panel that floated in midair, its holographic edges shimmering faintly. This was the most prestigious military academy in the Andrix system, attended by the brightest minds of over a dozen alien species. Today, however, an unmistakable tension crackled in the air, disrupting the usual quiet order. In the center of the room sat Cadet Leah Morgan, the sole human in a sea of alien faces. Her presence alone seemed to draw invisible lines in the room, dividing it not by seating but by unspoken allegiances. At first glance, she looked unremarkable, dressed in the standard cadet uniform. A high-collared black suit with silver accents, her light brown hair was tied into a neat braid, and her sharp, green eyes scanned the room with practiced calm. Yet her very existence here was a quiet rebellion against the unspoken rules of galactic hierarchy. She was a Deathworlder, a human, and that alone made her both an anomaly and a curiosity. Leah adjusted her posture, her back straight, her expression neutral. She was used to the stares by now. The way the Zyran cadets, with their silken, iridescent scales, whispered behind their clawed hands. The cautious glances from the tall, insectoid Surthas, their multifaceted eyes reflecting her face like a fractured mirror. Even the ever-composed Vren, whose gelatinous forms rarely betrayed emotion, rippled slightly when she passed. She was an outsider, a representative of a species that many of them considered reckless, unrefined, and dangerously unpredictable. The murmurs grew louder as the instructor entered the room. Commander Tilrex was a towering figure, a member of the Galruth species whose rocky, obsidian-like skin glinted under the bioluminescent lights. His voice, when it came, was a deep rumble that seemed to shake the very walls. "Cadets," he began, his piercing orange eyes sweeping across the room. "Today, we begin our study of human military training protocols." The room fell silent, the air thick with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Leah could feel the weight of their gazes shift toward her, burning into the back of her neck like a spotlight. She kept her face carefully blank, refusing to show the discomfort knotting in her stomach. "Humanity," Tilrex continued, pacing slowly in front of the display, "hails from Earth, a planet classified as a Class 12 Death World. This designation means it is one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy capable of supporting sentient life. Their gravity, climate, and ecosystems are considered lethal by most galactic standards." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And yet, they have not only survived but thrived." A Vren cadet raised a gelatinous appendage. "Commander," it said in a voice that resonated like a chime, "what relevance does their planet's danger level have to their training methods?" Tilrex's lips curled into what could have been a smile, though on his stone-like face it looked more like a grimace. "Everything," he replied, with a flick of his clawed hand. The holographic display shifted to show a human training exercise. Leah felt her chest tighten as the familiar scene unfolded. A firing range in the middle of a dense forest, soldiers moving with precision as live rounds tore through targets. "Humans train with live ammunition," Tilrex said, his tone heavy, with both respect and something bordering on disbelief. The room erupted into a cacophony of reactions, gasps, murmurs, and even a few outright exclamations of shock. Leah gritted her teeth. Here it came. "That's barbaric," a Zyran cadet hissed, its scaled crest flaring. "Why risk your own soldiers?" "It's illogical," added a Sertha, its mandibles clicking in disapproval. "What kind of species would willingly endanger themselves during training?" Leah clenched her fists under the desk, her nails digging into her palms. She knew better than to speak out, but the growing disdain in the room was a familiar sting. It wasn't the first time she'd had to endure their judgment, And it wouldn't be the last, Cadet Morgan, Tilrex said, his deep voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Perhaps you can enlighten us. All eyes turned to her, the room suddenly suffocatingly quiet. Leah rose from her seat, her movements measured. She met Tilrex's gaze, then swept her eyes across the room, taking in the varied expressions: curiosity, skepticism, even fear. "It's not about risk," she began, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "It's about preparation. On Earth, danger is a constant. The environment, the predators, even the weather. It all forces us to adapt, to prepare. For the worst. Training with live ammo isn't about recklessness, it's about realism. If you can handle the pressure of a real bullet, a real explosion, then you're ready for the chaos of battle. Anything less," she hesitated, choosing her words carefully, "anything less is a disservice to the soldier." Her explanation hung in the air, met with a mix of thoughtful silence and lingering disbelief. A few cadets exchanged doubtful glances, while others seemed to mull over her words. Tilrex nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "A compelling argument," he said, his tone neutral, "but I suspect some of your peers may need more tangible evidence." Before Leah could respond, the display shifted again. This time, it showed footage of a live-fire exercise gone wrong. A young recruit, barely older than Leah had been when she first joined, was caught in a misstep, his leg caught by shrapnel. The blood, the chaos, the raw reality of it was laid bare for everyone to see. The room erupted once more, this time with louder protests. Leah felt her stomach twist as the memories flooded back. Her own scars, both physical and emotional, hidden beneath the fabric of her uniform. "Enough," Tilrex commanded, silencing the room with a single word. "We will discuss this further in tomorrow's session. For now, consider the implications of what you have seen." Leah sank back into her seat, her mind racing. As the cadets filed out, many of them throwing her uneasy glances, she felt a presence linger beside her. She turned to see a Zyran cadet, its iridescent scales shifting nervously. "Do you really think it's worth it?" it asked hesitantly, its voice barely above a whisper. Leah hesitated, searching for the right words. But before she could answer, the station's intercom blared, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Attention all cadets. Emergency combat. Drills are now in effect. Report to your assigned stations immediately." The room froze, the weight of the announcement sinking in. Leah's heart raced as she met the Zyran's wide eyes. Whatever conversation they were about to have would have to wait. Something was happening, and Leah had a sinking feeling that this drill was about to get very real. Leah's boots struck the metallic floor of the station's corridor with a steady rhythm as she moved swiftly toward her assigned station. Around her, cadets rushed in organized chaos, their varied forms and movements a kaleidoscope of alien biology. Despite the cacophony, the air felt heavy, the announcement echoing in her mind. Emergency combat drills. The words didn't sit right. Drills were announced in advance, meticulously planned to test readiness. This felt off. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to focus. Whatever this was, she had to be ready. She always had to be ready. As she turned a corner, a voice called out, sharp and familiar. "Morgan." Leah glanced back to see Nix, Acer the cadet, skittering toward her on 6 segmented legs. His mandibles clicked nervously, and his compound eyes reflected the flashing emergency lights. Those Sirthas were naturally imposing, with their chitinous exoskeletons and towering height. Nix carried himself with an awkwardness that made him seem younger than he was. "Hey, Nix," Leah said, slowing her pace slightly so he could catch up. "You okay?" I don't like this," he admitted, his voice a soft staccato. "Drills aren't supposed to be surprises, are they?" "No," Leah replied, her tone grim. "They're not." He fell into step beside her, his legs making a faint clicking sound against the floor. "Do you think it's a test? For us, I mean. To see how we handle uncertainty?" Leah considered the possibility. It would be a cruel but effective way to assess their adaptability. Still, something about the timing gnawed at her. Maybe, she said, though she didn't sound convinced. As they approached the armory, a tall Zyran cadet blocked their path. Its shimmering scales shifted to a deep, iridescent blue, a sign of irritation. Deathworlder, it hissed, its voice dripping with disdain. What's the matter? Afraid this drill will expose your species' barbaric methods? Leah stopped, meeting the Zyran's gaze with an expression of practiced calm. She'd dealt with this kind of antagonism since arriving at the academy. Most of the other cadets viewed humans with a mix of fear and contempt, their perceptions shaped by exaggerated stories of Earth's harsh environment and humanity's unorthodox ways. I don't have time for this, Varek, Leah said evenly. We're all expected at our stations. Varek's crest flared, a gesture of dominance. You think your human stubbornness will save you here? Your kind relies on brute force, not strategy. Let's see how far that gets you. Before Leah could respond, Nick stepped forward, his mandibles twitching. Enough, Varek. We're all on the same team. Save your posturing for the simulation. Varek sneered but stepped aside, his scales shifting to a pale green as he muttered something under his breath. Leah exhaled quietly, giving Nyx a small nod of thanks before continuing on. As they suited up in the armory, Leah's thoughts drifted to her past. Memories she usually kept buried began to surface. She saw herself at 16, standing in the rain outside a burned-down shelter in the middle of Earth's wilderness. Her father, a survivalist and former Marine, had stood beside her, his weathered face stern but not unkind. Leah, he'd said, placing a firm hand on her shoulder, the world doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't care if you're ready. It'll throw everything at you. Storms, predators, people who want to tear you down. But you don't give up. You adapt. You fight. Because giving up isn't an option. Those words had stayed with her, a mantra she repeated to herself during the toughest moments. They'd carried her through the grueling selection process to join the academy, through the sleepless nights and the constant scrutiny of being the lone human among alien peers. But even with her father's advice echoing in her mind, there were times she doubted herself, times she wondered if she'd ever truly belong here. The simulation room was massive, its holographic projectors capable of recreating any environment with startling realism. Today, the chosen setting was an arid desert, complete with shifting dunes and a blazing sun that felt almost real against their skin. Leah's team, comprising herself, Nyx, and 3 other cadets, was tasked with securing a supply cache located at the heart of the simulated battlefield. As they moved out, Leah took point, her keen eyes scanning the horizon. The team followed her lead, though she could feel their unease. She'd earned their grudging respect during previous exercises, but trust was still a fragile thing. Enemy contact, 2 o'clock, Nyx whispered, his mandibles clicking nervously. Leah followed his gaze and spotted the opposing team cresting a dune, their forms shimmering in the heat. Take cover, she ordered, her voice calm but firm. The team scattered, finding what little cover the terrain offered. Leah's heart pounded as she assessed the situation. The enemy team had the high ground and superior numbers. It was a textbook disadvantage. But Leah had grown up in a world where survival often meant turning disadvantages into opportunities. Reiner, can you lay down suppressing fire? She asked, glancing at the heavyset Vryn, who carried the squad's support weapon. The gelatinous cadet rippled in affirmation. Acknowledged. As Reiner unleashed a torrent of simulated plasma fire, Leah and Nyx flanked left, using the distraction to close the distance. The plan was risky, but risk was something Leah had learned to embrace. The skirmish was intense, the simulated weapons and environmental effects making it feel almost too real. Leah's muscles burned as she ducked and dodged, her breaths coming in sharp bursts. She could feel the tension in her team, their movements hesitant compared to her own. They weren't used to this level of intensity, this raw, chaotic reality. But Leah was. As they secured the cache and the simulation ended, Leah's team gathered in a debriefing room. The holographic playback showed their performance, highlighting both strengths and weaknesses. Commander Tilrex stood at the front, his sharp gaze cutting through them. You succeeded, he said, his tone neutral. But barely. Your execution was sloppy, your communication lacking. His eyes landed on Leah, except for Cadet Morgan. Once again, the Deathworlder demonstrates a unique aptitude for chaos. The room was silent, the unspoken tension palpable. Leah met Tilrex's gaze, her expression unreadable. She knew his words were both a compliment and a subtle jab, a reminder that her methods, while effective, were not fully embraced. Later that evening, Leah sat alone in the academy's observation deck, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The station's artificial gravity made her feel grounded, but the weight in her chest was heavier than anything physics could impose. "Do you ever feel like you're fighting uphill?" Nix's voice broke the silence. She turned to see him, approaching, his posture unusually subdued. "All the time," she admitted, managing a faint smile. "But that's the human way, isn't it? Fighting uphill is kind of our thing." He chuckled softly, the sound clicking in his throat. "I still don't understand your species, but I think I'm starting to see why you're here." Before Leah could respond, the station's intercom blared again, this time with a tone far more urgent. "Attention all personnel. Unidentified vessels have entered the sector. All cadets report to your emergency stations immediately." Leah's stomach dropped. This wasn't a drill. She and Nix exchanged a tense glance before, sprinting toward the armory. As the corridors filled with the sound of alarms and the pounding of boots, Leah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. Whatever was coming, she would face it head-on. But a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind. Something about this felt orchestrated, deliberate. And as they reached the armory, the sight of live weapons being distributed confirmed her worst fears. This wasn't just a test. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous.